Good morning. Good morning. I appreciate you guys showing up at 8 o'clock in the morning. I know it's early, but we're trying to do this thing where every Monday morning we want to not only inspire you, but also give you some immediate strategies and things that you can do to help folks that are returning from jails, prisons, and institutions. So let me introduce myself. My name is Louis Conway Jr. You may know me, you may not, but I'm formerly incarcerated, and I've been working on a series of videos that is specifically designed to help folks reenter from prison. And one of the things we talked about is, when we're thinking about people coming home, we have to really begin to look at it as a strategy as opposed to a tactic. And one of the things we talked about was centering Black and brown people from directly impacted communities is going to be crucial when we're talking about solutions for creating that kind of a runway back into the communities. And so one of the things I wanted to do is begin to talk to people who are either the loved ones of folks that are going through reentry or folks who may have gone through reentry themselves. And so one of the people I felt that would be very powerful in this conversation, obviously, would be my wife. Let me bring her on. Her name is Nicole. Nicole has been part of my reentry process for some time. I won't steal any of her thunder. Would you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Nicole Conway. I am the wife to Louis Conway Jr.
She is shortchanging herself. Nicole is a mental health advocate. She's been a leader within the fashion industry for some time. And she has also, really been instrumental in me being able to transition from a place of my conviction being a disability to where we've been able to use it as a platform. So I want to talk to her kind of and get some of her input about what she thinks has been most instrumental in that process. So anyway, Nicole, thank you for joining us this morning. I know it's early, and I know it's you're looking awfully amazing for this
Well,
time
thank
of
you.
morning.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Let's kind of begin at the beginning, right? Prior to us connecting, what was your experience with incarceration and institutionalization?
For me, I would say my oldest child's father was incarcerated. And it was hard at that time because after she was born, he had been in and out a couple of times, but he got into some trouble and he had to turn himself in right after we had our child. So the stigma of having to go in and out, trying to take her in to see him, I just decided that I just couldn't do it anymore because it took a toll on me, not only because she was small, but more so for myself having to go in there and see people being caged. That was a lot for me.
So what kind of lasting impact do you think it may have had on our daughter?
Um, I would say having to explain to her as an adult why he was there or what he did to get into trouble. Some of the things I did not know, and I probably should not know. It's probably best because trying to have to explain that would have been hard. Not having her father around, and then when she was old enough, there was a couple times he went in and out as well. So keeping that from her and not talking to her about it at all, really, because she was so little.
So it's easy for folks to see how the impact of incarceration extends beyond the individual being incarcerated, and it often, more often than not, impacts family members, loved ones, particularly children. So when you and I got first introduced, um, how were you introduced to my background?
So basically, we met online, and I did not know that my husband was formerly incarcerated. When we first talked on the phone, he told me straight up everything I needed to know, where he worked, um, what he went to prison for, and it gave me pause at first because I was like, well, I don't know if I want to go into this relationship knowing these things. but I took a chance. And everybody has an opportunity to change their lives around, and I'm all about that because my life hasn't been perfect. So why would I put that against you? So I took that chance, and here we are today.
So you spoke about where I worked at. So let's kind of hone in on that. What two-part question. Where did I work at that time, and why did I work there?
You worked at the Yellow Rose of Texas, which is a strip club, and the reason you worked there is because no one else would employ you
And why wouldn't anyone else employ me?
because of your background.
So is it safe to say that my background created a significant barrier in order for me to be a provider, a priest, a protector, and all of that we talk about now?
Absolutely. That takes a toll on a person that is dating because you want to see the best in the other person and you want to give them the opportunity. But you also have to keep in mind that what if he's not able to work there? What are we going to do as far as income? And taking the load on as the female in the relationship is kind of hard because you want to make sure that they're doing their part and you're doing your part without making them feel smaller. So that was important to me.
So let's touch on the employment part and then we'll move on to some of the other barriers. So as we got together, there was an effort for me to transition out of being a strip club DJ. And what kind of barriers were you able to witness me leaving a stable employment at the strip club up until I was able to find employment at grassroots?
Well, the reason why you left the strip club in my eyes, and we both talked about this, is because you wrote your first book, and feeling what's my word, almost like a guilt. Like I'm writing this book to encourage people to do better, but I'm still in this strip club. And I witnessed it myself, how uncomfortable you felt being around that environment and then writing something so positive. It was hard to be in a place where you couldn't encourage anybody in that light and be in such a dark space. Um, I remember the day you called me and said, I can't do it anymore. I just can't work here anymore. And I didn't go into a panic. My first thing was, well, what do you want to do? And you said, I got to get out of here because I can't write something and be a hypocrite basically and be in the strip club. And I said, quit. And you said you did. Then the next step was the person you were living with. It was, well, I can't, me and him are not, this is not working out where I can live here. And I just said, come on. I told you, just come on. And from there, we built on that. Um, I most definitely had to pray the whole time because I wanted to make sure I was making the right decision. Even from our first conversation when we first talked about where you work and what you went to prison for, I had to pray that whole time because if it had been me in the flesh, I probably said no. So that was huge for me. So
So,
that's what our relationship has been built on prayer.
so you talked about the person I was living with. I think that's a great segue into the next thing. So, um, having been with me for the time period that you've been with me, and even at that point, was there some hesitation or would you have received some pushback had you contacted the management about me living with you based upon my background?
Absolutely. I know for a fact, just from our history and trying to find places to stay, that no matter where we go, that pops up immediately. There's no hesitation. As soon as the application is put in, that is a red flag that comes up for whoever. They probably would have given me pushback and said that because of your background, he can't stay with you. But I never said anything about it because at the time I just didn't know. But as we've grown into our relationship, I know that that has been a huge factor in us having a place to stay without them knowing about your background.
So all things being equal, if we had gone about the way we should have and contacted the management, there's a good chance you would have been evicted as a result of that.
Exactly.
So when we think about strategies, and I'm talking to the public now, when we think about strategies, I need folks to really appreciate when people are coming home from prison and detention and jail, and they have to live with their loved ones. If we don't address some of the restrictions that landlords have imposed, then we're really putting not only the loved one in danger of losing their home, but we're
Right.
definitely putting folks who are recently released on a quick path back into prison. So you spoke about the difficulties we've had with different living situations. So as we talk about the problems, let's also talk about the solutions, right? So what were some of the solutions that we employed once we decided to move into a place that we were both on police at?
So once we relocated to New Jersey, I knew that there would be an issue with us, with the red flag coming up. So
Well, I don't want to interrupt you, but how about prior before we moved to New Jersey? How about
oh,
let's talk
so
about
living in Texas, we had to relocate from that apartment we were living in to East Austin because my husband was running for office. Every place that we went to, apartments, duplexes, everywhere, have they shut the doors on us and said they didn't care if it was 100 years after he got out of prison that we would be able to get a place with both of our names on it. We did not want to go into the situation where we were lying, saying, "Oh, I'm just living there by myself," because it would defeat the purpose of us living somewhere. So we actually asked an apartment complex in Austin, and they told us that no, you can't stay here. If you were to get an apartment, it would have to be on your own. So what we implemented was, instead of trying to go to these places that would run our background, big time, we went through not apartments, we went through neighborhoods and looked for places that were owned by the owner instead of an apartment complex or through a company. And it just so happened that we found a beautiful home, and the person that leased the home to us had a background. And the only way that we found out she had a background is because Lewis had a conversation with her.
And so to give that process some context, I want people to understand that we were both gainfully employed. We were both earning enough to pay 3 times the amount of rent.
Right.
We didn't have any evictions on our credit. I had not been arrested or I hadn't, broken any kind of legal obligation in regards to my criminal background. Yet there were still significant barriers, regardless of how much time had elapsed, how much I had done, and us being financially able to bear the responsibility of rent and or a mortgage. And so, as she said, we drove around neighborhoods. We looked for houses that had signs in the yard that were from the owner and not from some kind of realtor. And even once we were able to find a home and we decided to relocate, what was that process like?
I would say that this situation was a little different because it wasn't a thing of driving around. I had to find us a realtor here that was referred to a realtor from Texas. I told her exactly what we were looking for. And when I went into it, I didn't worry about whether there was a background or not. I just said, we just got to do this leap of faith.
Don't
So,
gloss over that first part though, right? Because we need people to understand how important that network was and creating those type of networks. So how did we get in contact with a realtor here? How do we find that person?
So our realtor in Austin that we are friends with as well, I contacted her and asked her, did she have a realtor that she knew that we could trust here in Jersey? And she said, I don't know her very well, but I think she would be good for you guys. She connected us, and it was a marriage made in heaven.
And what did and let's give them both a plug, Christy
Okay.
Hall,
Christy
uh,
Hall with Keller Williams Realty.
in Austin, and there was Kinkisha, who was also with
They're
Keller,
both with Keller Williams,
or
yes.
Keller Wood. So
Mhm.
what did Kinkisha do for us?
So we basically told Keisha exactly what we wanted, all our specs, where we wanted it. We wanted a garage, the whole nine. Um, she put the application in, and as soon as the application, the red flag came up, she contacted us and she said, "You guys, what's going on with this?" So we explained to her what happened and how long ago it was, and we said no matter where we apply, it's going to pop up regardless. So she said, well, okay, let's just go ahead and put these applications in anyway. If the people want to speak with you or they want to talk to you further, she said, we'll just take that chance. So it was literally a leap of faith in doing this. So the first place we found, because I said I only want 2 weeks where we were staying temporarily to find us a spot. I told her, I said, I need us to get into this place immediately by the first of the month. So she started looking around. She found the place. I told her what I wanted. She found two places. One, I said, no, not so much. The one we're in now, I was on it. So the owners wanted to know who we were because the red flag popped up. So she went to the extent of pulling up Lewis's articles of him running for office, how he's reformed himself, how he's helping his community. She pulled up all these articles and sent it to the owners of this condo we're living in.
So let's
So,
pause right there for a moment.
okay.
So she became an advocate for us.
Yes, she did.
Right. And so as we think about, as I talked in other videos, how we want to put together these advocacy groups, we talked about a housing group, we talked about a release group, we talked about a community group.
Mm-hmm.
So Kinkisha would fit within the housing group of where she was able to advocate for us in a way with the owner that we couldn't based upon what I had done. Right. That helped us kind of overcome some of the barriers. Right.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that. And so as we close, and I really thank you so much for getting up this early with me. I want to go into some of the health issues, right, of folks reentering from jails, prisons, and institutions, just based upon your experience with me and having met me when I didn't have health insurance, to having health insurance. What was the determining factor in me having access to health insurance?
One, I would say anyone getting out of prison, they definitely need to get some type of therapy or some mental health, a therapist or a counselor of some sort, because there's a lot of things that are suppressed that are not dealt with. And I know in the mental health area, you have to have some type of insurance.
Did I have access to that at the strip club?
No, you did not have access to that.
And so when we got together and you were able to put me on your insurance,
Mm-hmm.
that was really the first time I ever had health
Yes,
insurance.
it was.
And so I want people to really understand how instrumental, sometimes loved ones can be in not only reorienting folks back into the community, but into a safe place of healthcare as well.
Right.
So without her healthcare, and the reason why I didn't have access to healthcare is because I wasn't in a job that offered healthcare. And the onus of the people coming home from prison are either going to be in temp jobs where healthcare isn't offered, or they're going to get just below the amount of hours available where you qualify for healthcare. Right. So, how big of an impact has having healthcare had on my life?
It's been huge because you have high blood pressure, and without it, who knows where you could be. You have the health scare with your heart. So those were just the beginning. As time passed and we got into campaigning and it got very stressful, then you started having seizures. So without health care, we might not be having this conversation right now. So it's extremely important.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's extremely important that you had health care, because we had no idea later on now that we were going to find out that you had epilepsy as well as your high blood pressure. Um, and then even just having the money, whether you were working or not, to cover the cost of doctor's visits or medication is just, it's ridiculous, the pricing. So yes, insurance is extremely important.
And so some of the things we kind of glossed over and didn't talk about was um, some of the extents I went to maintain employment and to make sure that I was able to bring in an income. And perhaps we'll talk about that later at a different time. So anyway, thank you so much. Where can we find you at online?
You can find me on Nicole Conway Speaks on Instagram, as well as Nicole Conway Speaks on Twitter. If you follow me on Facebook, I have Nicole Conway Speaks there as well.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. So again, folks, thank you for joining us on a Monday morning. And as we close, ask yourself, where are you fitting in the cycle, right? And we have to be thinking about the objective being for folks that have access to services, transitional support, whether that be permanent. We want to make sure folks have access to food and housing, mental health and physical health services, but also financial support for individuals and families, right? So every Monday morning, I will see you next Monday morning. Appreciate you guys checking out with us, and always like, share, and subscribe. Have an amazing rest of your day, morning, and week. We'll talk to you later. Have a good one.